Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for our networking masterclass. This is the first session of 4 sessions that are designed to be very interactive and really hands-on. There will be demos throughout, things like that, but it's all designed to really help you develop your own networking plan. And so wherever you are, as you're coming to us, it's just fine. We will meet you where you are and assist you in growing and deepening those kinds of connections and planning from there to be most effective in your networking. My name is Jody Hammer, and I'm an RPCV from Ecuador from some time ago. And I'm joined here. I'm the Career Services Specialist for NPCA's Global Reentry Program. So many of you have seen me in the past doing different webinars and such, but this networking masterclass I'm super excited about. And part of the reason is because I get to collaborate with my very favorite co-conspirator, if you will, Dr. Rhonda Anstead, who is also an RPCV from South Africa. I'll let her introduce herself, but she is wonderful and has really collaborated with us on the many boot camps. If any of you have participated in the boot camps so far, you know how great she is. And I'm just very excited to be, co-leading this with Rhonda and working with all of you. I mean, this is my favorite part of my job, actually, working with, and I love the topic of networking. So if you can't tell, I'm a little excited. So why don't I turn it over to Rhonda and you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, let me just, so as Jody said, I'm Rhonda Anstead, and so I was RPCV in South Africa, and I have started my own career consulting practice, and I primarily work with people who are trying to make a difference in the world through their careers. And so I've worked with a lot of RPCVs, and I understand so many of the challenges that we face, so many of our dreams and aspirations. And also one of the things that I really love about collaborating with NPCA is just the community that we have, that the different strategies, the different grit and personality traits that we have to work with and that we are going to leverage. And so I just want to say a little bit about why we're doing this. And basically, I see networking a little bit like broccoli. Got lots of vitamins, but people aren't super excited to do it. And so sometimes you have to, like with kids trying to eat their broccoli, you've got to make it sound really exciting or disguise it somehow. And so that's what we're going to try to do. We're trying to make broccoli fun. And the reason why we are doing this is because networking is not only one of the most effective ways of getting a job, but it is also a really great way to connect with people. It actually can build your self-esteem. So just what does broccoli do? It doesn't build your bones. I think it does have calcium in it. It's good for you. And networking is good for you in ways that you don't necessarily realize when we say the word. So we want to talk about that a little bit. Why do people resist it? Why might you resist it? And then also to kind of break it down so that you can see there's different stages of networking. There's different reasons why people do this. I know that this group here has got various different reasons why networking can help you. And what we're going to do today is start developing your game plan. So even though there's going to be a little bit of talking from us and the rah eat your broccoli kind of energy here, this is also you're going to walk away with something and get clarity about what your goals are, get clarity about who you might network with, And then we're going to give you some activities to do. So basically, that's what we'll be talking about today. And we're going to be building on this over the next 4 sessions. We've designed it so that you can kind of come in and out of it. Out of the next 4 sessions, you get something from every single week that we do this. But if you stay with us for the entire 4 weeks, then you really are going to walk away with a really solid foundation. So the information that we're giving you, it's a little bit like the broccoli. The activities that you do, that is you strengthening your muscles. And so by the end of this, you will be a networking master and have kind of that combination of lived experience and understanding of why this is important. Okay, so let's start with what is this? What is this for you? And so we're going to give you some information about, different strategies, but I would like to hear from you about when you think of networking, what do you think of? And you feel free to unmute yourself and, maybe, raise your hand or put something in the chat. But let's start with what's going on with you when you hear the word networking.
And you're definitely welcome to put it in the chat if you prefer, and we can, read it out, but yes, absolutely.
Yes, right. And so we do want this again to be as active as possible. So we're going to be asking for people's thoughts. All right. And I'm not afraid to call on people either. So
nor am I. Even those without their camera on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyone have something? How do you define networking?
Brian, I'm looking at you. So why don't you unmute yourself and just say a little bit about what is it for you that why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of this?
And he's shared in the chat box too, just FYI, he shared moving beyond my comfort zone. No, it's fine. That's right. I can feed it to you. Moving beyond my comfort zone in talking to people. And Brian, that is spot on. Absolutely. Networking involves moving beyond your comfort level. We have another one that came in from Barbara who says, contacting and maintaining contact with people who might be useful to you and you to them. Oh, that's a great definition.
Yeah.
And there's one more. Karen shares connecting and building relationships with other professionals in my field.
Yeah. And Shayna, I see that you've got your hand raised. Is that how you pronounce your name? Okay. Yes.
Yeah. I think of it as just making connections, whether it's for work, for like you want to get a group of people together who are going to ride bikes. I mean, it's just making connections and kind of like finding common ground.
Yeah. So Jody and I often, because we talk about networking a lot, because this is such a staple of any kind of career advancement, job search, networking is so important. And we both kind of hate the word, that the word itself often puts people off. I often will talk about building community with like-minded people or building partnerships. And if you take a step back, it is such a human activity. It's really unfortunate, like if you break down network, it's like a net, something that traps you. Work, who enjoys doing that, and putting them together, and you really don't have a palatable phrase. So we use it because people understand what it means, but we really want you to reframe it as in, I'm hanging out with people that I enjoy hanging out with. That really is where we want to get you to go. Okay. So Jody, why don't you talk a little bit about this?
Sure. So Rhonda alluded to earlier, the need to network in part, but we really want to emphasize just very briefly a bit more about the reality of today's job market and why it is so essential to network, right? And a couple of those reasons are right here. And this is the source for this is, a Job Seeker Nation survey from JobVite in 2019. But basically, it asked, how did applicants hear about the jobs they got hired for? And look at these stats. 50% heard about the job from a friend, right? 30% through professional networks, 35%, and yes, I know that's over 100%. So some of these had both, right? They reported both, and that's okay too. Found out about job openings through social media. Where's the job posting? Where's the looking in the right, finding it online, just the job? It's not there, you notice. I mean, and that's just the power of networking and how far it can get you in regard to toward the job and the actual job that you want to get. So I guess I wanted to ask you, what strikes you about these stats? I mean, anything stand out or does that surprise you? What you can put it in the chat box or unmute yourself. Karen, yes.
I was in a workshop that you all gave last summer when we first evacuated. And I remember you saying something then about the hidden job market. I think the number was maybe like 80% or something. And what struck me was, oh my God, I don't know anybody in my field since I'm going into it, trying to get into a new field. And this kind of reinforces that same impression of, wow, if this is the way to get a job, I need to build a network. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. It may be the broccoli of your, whatever, but maybe you love broccoli, but for, kids or whatnot that hate broccoli, you may not want to do it, but you need to do it. Exactly. And, you read my mind, because wait until I get to the next slide. Look at this. Defining the hidden job market, right? I like to think of the job market as an iceberg, right? Where the majority of it is hidden. It's not in view, right? So you only see that tip of the iceberg, right? And so the jobs that you see online or posted, used to be newspapers, print areas, that kind of thing, would be that tip of the iceberg. But the vast majority, if you look down below, right, the vast majority is below the water, i.e. below the vision. You can't see it, right, without digging in and really engaging in networking. That's how you get to those hidden jobs, right? And the stat that you really confirmed there, Karen, up to 80%, you'll hear a little bit different stats, but of jobs are never officially posted. And now let's just say, I have to just say, for federal government, there are certain industries where they're required to post all jobs on USA Jobs, or except if you have NCE, which we have a session on that coming up, on I think it's the 10th, next Wednesday, but it's generally they have to post jobs. But outside of that, organizations aren't required to post jobs, or in certain areas, oftentimes, right? Some will have a policy, but the reality is how they get their talented workforce is oftentimes through, internal hire, right? So you get into a company and then you maybe are promoted and then they fill that position that's open, right? And employee referrals. How many of you have ever worked for a company where they offer an employee referral bonus, where if you refer somebody and they end up getting hired, you get paid a certain amount of money? Have any of you had that? Just put a little, raise your hand if that's the case. You have, Rhonda? Yeah, it's more and more common today. I mean, for the company to pay $300 or whatever it is, it's going to vary based on the company, but they're going to get somebody. If you're a good employee, what kind of an employee are you going to refer? Are you going to refer somebody who's not going to work? No, you're going to refer good candidates generally. So it helps them tap into a more talented and, capable, job, like a workforce. without having to spend money on necessarily, posting things in certain areas, because that does cost money too. And it takes time, right? Rhonda, did you want to add something on that?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. Just you mentioned, how the federal government has to post everything. And I worked with a client a few years ago who really wanted to work for FEMA. And so she started like doing informational interviews and talking to people who work there. And she actually got offered 2 different contracts.
Yes, good point.
Where she did not have, it wasn't posted.
Yep.
I think one of them was created because of her, because they wanted her to work for them.
Nice.
So even the federal government,
Yep.
with all the rules and bureaucracy and regulations, which
Yep.
is absolutely true, if it's officially for the
Yep.
government, it has to be posted.
But there's a lot of contract opportunities. You are absolutely right.
Yeah. And so I think, again, there are things that you won't know until you're talking to people that is available to you.
Yep, absolutely. And that's such a good point, Rhonda. Thank you for bringing that up. And so you're right, even in those sectors where you think that, oh, they have to always post the contractors, there's lots of ways to get around it. And there's a lot of special hiring authorities. NCE is not the only one. There's lots of different ones. So there are ways to kind of infiltrate the system without necessarily going through the very fun USA jobs, which is not impossible, but it's definitely not fun. And happy to talk to people more on that on the side as well. Lastly, I want to say about the hidden job market and the things that aren't posted. There's less competition, right? Every job that's posted, generally they attract hundreds of applicants, right? So if you're finding out about it through somebody who either works there or some way that you developed your network, and through a networking contact, you found out about this opportunity, you wrote them, you included in your cover letter what your connection was to make sure that it's really clear, right? As recommended by putting the person, who works there, whatever their name, that is going to be much less competition, and you're going to be seen a lot more than amongst the 200. Not that you can't get a job that way. I've gotten many jobs that way, but it's just the numbers are in your favor doing the, with the networking.
Yeah. So Tom, you have your hand raised. So yeah, what would you like?
I'm just hitting buttons here to see if they work.
Oh,
sort of thing.
well, that worked.
You were talking about giving bonuses to employees. My favorite story is when I was working up north in the tech industry. I'm in LA. I was working up in San Francisco. There was one of the tech businesses, they were looking to hire tech people, which were impossible to find. So they bought $100,000 Porsche. They put it in the lobby, and they said, everyone, the next 10 people that recommend someone that gets hired as an IT person will get a ticket for winning that Porsche. So you had a lottery. 1 in 10 chance of winning $100,000 Porsche. I was like, wow, that obviously got attention, and I'm talking about it years later here. I think the other thing, and maybe you're going to get to it, I've always thought that on the other side, if you're hiring people, what's the first thing you do? You go out and you say, hey, do you know someone that can do this?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Start talking. It's like, I would much rather hire someone that I know, instead of, oh God, now we got to post it and we got to vet people. So it works from both sides.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tom. And it's an expensive process. Like, hiring somebody is a risky endeavor. Let's just face it, right? If you don't know them, you don't know, you know only on the resume and what you see on LinkedIn and how they interview. You're still you're obviously making a choice, choosing the best of what you think is the best of, but it is still a risky endeavor, right? And the last thing you want to do is to have to start again with from scratch and go forward. That's no fun. So it totally makes sense to employers as well, to bring on people who hear about the opportunities, in this, referred and things like that. So absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah.
So the benefits, we talked about, why it's important, right? And then just very briefly here, some of the benefits. There are many benefits, and I really encourage people to try to embrace the benefits. I know it may not be easy, and especially in the beginning, if you're, not comfortable with it, or maybe, you're just feel kind of queasy even thinking about networking, all of that. Just there are so many benefits, some of which we've talked about, right? Obviously it can help you land new positions and opportunities and connect with, good connections, but also your exposure, right? So depending on what your nature of your business is, right, you can really draw attention to maybe, your business. Maybe you are doing consulting or things like that. And so that can really help. And I know, Rhonda's nodding her head because that's clearly, a way of getting business, right? And, getting known in the industry, and yeah, so all of that I think is very important, right? And then just really building those connections, right? And relationships. Like I talk about it as relationship building, right? It's building your alliance or your web of people, right? These are people, these are connections. They're not numbers, they're not network. I don't like, I hate that term as well, to be honest. Yeah, as Rhonda said earlier, just because I think it has such a, people think of it as, oh, sleazy, slimy, ew, it's, whatever. So it really is. I mean, it can help you to grow your base and maintain that, which can be really important in the future, right? But ultimately, as I'm not sure, was it Shayna or Karen, somebody brought up the common ground, like the aspect of, connecting with people. It may not be just for business, right? And that's our emphasis in this program as well, is this is not just, networking to get your next job. It's networking to build, right, your connections, your bases. In many ways, it could be that you're wanting to connect with like-minded, people who are equally committed to the environment or whatever your cause is, and you can find them. And we're going to talk specifically in this, series, how you do that using LinkedIn, using other ways to make sure that you connect with people, because you can learn a lot from other people, but also just connecting and talking about, issues that are of passion, you're both passionate about. Those kinds of things are great as well. And when you build your network in that way, it's a natural, healthy network. That's not one that you're just going to when you need something. And we're going to talk about that later too. It's that give and take. So I think there's so many benefits and, for networking, and there's probably ones that I haven't even shared here, right? If you have any thoughts, feel free to, dump that in the chat box or unmute yourself. If you have why is networking beneficial? Why do you think it's beneficial? If there's something that I haven't brought up, or Rhonda as well.
Yeah, one thing that I just want to say is that, Jody and I often come to these, these workshop series and webinars from a job search perspective, but this is also really useful. Like, again, like if you're starting your own business, this is one of the best ways of
yes.
If you're, freelancer, it's really one of the only ways, or again, just really effective. So and developing friendships. So again, Jody and I both wish there was a different word for the networking, but I know that when I started putting myself out there intentionally, then I've developed some of my closest friends through this process. So that's really what we want to bring into it is the fun and the joy of connecting with people.
And the mentors, like when I think about my own networking, I have really been fortunate to have developed some phenomenal, mentors along the way from contacts that I've made through networking. And, it's just, it's really, I think that helps put it in a better perspective too. Once you get that healthy network going, you're like, okay, this isn't so hard. This isn't, anything to be, so whatever against. Yeah.
So resistant to. Yeah.
So resistant to, exactly, which we'll come back to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So speaking of resistance,
And broccoli.
And broccoli. So basically, Jody and I brainstormed, but again, we know the reasons why a lot of people resist networking. I feel a lot of the reasons. I believe a lot of them myself. So what I like to do is just show you some of the common ones, and then just ask people in the chat just to put like either an emoji or a yup or something, like if this is something that you struggle with. So that help us know kind of how to frame some of these things. So if if one of your challenges is you don't know who to talk to, just put a little note.
Or just raise your hand if you want as well. We can just take a quick look either way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Thumbs up is good.
Great.
And so it's really hard to network if you don't know who you want to speak to.
Sure.
So the second thing is the what. What do I say if I do meet somebody I want to talk to? So how many people struggle with figuring out what is it that I'm going to say in some kind of networking situation? Yep. Yeah, the feeling uncomfortable asking people for time.
Yep.
Absolutely. What about those introverts out there? Putting yourself out socially. So Karen mentioned feeling uncomfortable asking people for their time. So that's related, right? It is putting yourself out there. It is being social in ways that can be really uncomfortable. Some people love talking to strangers, but I think that's the minority. And we want to show you that you do not have to be extroverted. You do not have to change your personality to do this well. And so then this is the other thing that Jody was talking about, like, again, asking a favor, trying to sell myself, handing everybody. So yes, this is, again, when we think of networking, we often think of sales, and most RPCVs have chosen not to become a salesperson. And so to do that for yourself is even more uncomfortable than doing your job. So yeah, the schmoozy.
Make that schmoozy. That's a better word in that, it feels just schmoozy, like you're having to just, yeah.
Yeah. And Nicole talks about how it doesn't feel genuine. And so I think that's, again, something that we want to reframe for ourselves. This is not anything different than we do on a day-to-day basis. It's got a little bit of intention and a little bit of structure, but it is talking human to someone that you have something in common with. And so, so here's another one of my favorites. Like, I did an informational interview and it didn't lead to a job. So it doesn't work. And, or, I put myself out there and nobody responded. And so it's, so this is common. And especially if you don't want to do it anyways, if it's yucky broccoli and you eat it and you don't grow the muscles that you were promised and whatever that is, it's really hard to try it again and again and again. So that's one of the things that we want to shift. So again, so that it's not painful and that you've got the perseverance so that it does work, because it's not a magic bullet, but it is something that you definitely want in your toolkit. And so a couple of other people have been, sharing why they resist networking. Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned? What is your personal obstacle to getting out there and talking to people? I'm assuming that since you're here, you want to learn how to do it. So, so yes, Brian. So you need to unmute yourself. And nope, you're still muted. Let's see if we can't do anything about that. So there we go. Okay, try now.
How about now? Thanks. I'm
Yes.
calling in with the phone. It's different.
Yep.
Anyhow, a hesitation that I feel like I have, I'm not hesitant to actually talk to people. It's something about like the LinkedIn platform of I'm happy to like reach out to people, happy to like talk about common interests, happy to do informational interviewing, happy to find all that stuff. And then there's something about like that next step of like, hey, do you want to be LinkedIn friends? Or feeling like I want to use that platform. Something about that platform, just, it's kind of like I need to maintain that relationship in a certain way that I don't care for. And that's the part that I feel is not authentic. All the stuff that you've talked about, I'm happy to like work myself up before a networking event or work myself up to like go out and talk to people, even though I don't want to. And it usually goes just fine, or even at conferences to kind of set up outside meetings over Zoom. You know, but I'm just wondering, I guess I'm saying this in the form of a question, is that a common thing? And does that make sense to anyone else in the room around a hesitation around using the LinkedIn platform, like the established ways of networking? So maybe you can help me get off mute again or back on mute.
Yeah. And Jody, you are muted. Okay.
Sorry. I was going to say, we are going to be talking a lot about that specifically next week when we do the whole LinkedIn, really focusing a lot on LinkedIn and a demo walk through all of that. But I will say, you know, you had mentioned, you know, that I think that's totally normal, that discomfort with, oh, okay, so I made this great contact, but is it okay to ask them to connect on LinkedIn? And how do I do that professionally? I mean, and just if you met somebody at a conference or somewhere or whatever, you know, your connection request, you go to LinkedIn, you go to the connection request and you put in the personalized, you always personalize it, right? You say, great meeting you at the XYZ conference, would love to stay in touch or would love to stay connected.
Yeah.
Period. And then they will probably, you know, and that way, and then stay in touch. Don't just drop them until you need something from them. Like maybe share something. Hey, I found this. It reminded me of our conversation at the, you know, maybe you talked about something in particular. You share something of value. And we'll talk about that more too.
I am social media resistant. So if this was a webinar on resistance to social media, I would be the one being like, yes, please tell me some strategies here. And I think, Brian, you brought up such a good point. There are things that I love about LinkedIn, but I did not love it at the beginning at all. And again, it felt very artificial and like everyone's like, oh, you know, like LinkedIn is saying you should connect with this person. And you're like, but I don't know this person. It's a weird thing. And social media platforms are taking away the human connection, and seeing that more and more, you know, all the stuff that's come out about Facebook and Instagram, you know, like that there are some very negative aspects of social media. So your resistance is human, to be honest.
Yeah.
So what is useful, number one, is to know how to use it and to know how to use it for yourself. And that it is not, and it should not be, and it is not my main way of connecting with people. I've got over 500 connections on LinkedIn, but I do not spend time with people on LinkedIn. I talk to people. I like, you know, Zoom and in person when that's safe. So this is something to keep in mind, is how do you best network? We are going to talk about that in a later week, building on your strengths, networking from your strengths. And so those are things to keep in mind is, all right, so I might be introverted, but generally introverts are really good listeners. So then you reframe networking, not as I've got to be talking to all these people, but I'm really interested in hearing people's stories. I'm just going to ask questions. That is a super effective way of networking. So all of these things we are going to tackle. We're going to talk about how to find people who to talk to, what to say that is authentic to you, what to do with your different personality traits, how to be patient and persistent, and as well as all these other things on how do you make this human? How do you make this work for you? So one of the things to realize too is that there's just different kinds and different stages. So I just want to talk about a few. There's more than these. Again, this is very job search centric. And so if you are networking for business purposes or for common interest purposes, but it can be really useful at the beginning of your career to help you identify what would I be good at, what would I enjoy, and so few people, so few youngins do this. Talk to people and say, "This, I'm really interested in animals, but I don't like blood. So a veterinarian would be a good thing for me. What are some other things that I could do?" And so just getting different perspectives, understanding the different fields or industries. So if you are changing careers, if you're like, I've been in this for a long, long time and I'm ready for something else, but I don't know what that is. Networking, informational interviewing, conversations, these are all great. Now, when Jody and I are talking about networking, and we'll talk about this more, it's not about asking for a job, but at the same time, if you're looking for job leads, talking to people is still a really useful way of doing that. So instead of, would you hire me? Would you give me a job? It could be, are you familiar with some things that I could do? I really want to do international development, project management. Do you know of organizations or teams that might be hiring for that? I think that organizational research is one of the most underutilized components of job search. And the great thing about researching organizations, how many people here have had bad bosses or have had uncomfortable team members? You know, it's I'm going to raise my hand on that one. I've been in many situations where it's so if you research an organization ahead of time, you can actually interview your boss, your potential boss. It's like, that's one of the things that can make or break a job, right? Is if you've got a good boss or not. And if you don't know who you're going to be working for, then it's such a crapshoot. So by researching organizations, you can sidestep that. They can give you feedback on applications, resume, interview, the nitty gritty. So,
and Rhonda, just to add to that, I think the whole like gaining more insight into, you know, certain positions, things like that, you can very easily say to somebody, you know, I'm exploring opportunities in the, you know, international development arena. And as such, I'm looking to connect with professionals working in that field to learn a little more about their own experiences. Wondering if you might have 15 to 20 minutes of your time at your convenience to chat with me about your own experience and any tips you might have. Number one, people love to be at, I mean, you always think it's this big burden on them, but honestly, it could very easily be their favorite part of their day. Oh my gosh, I got to connect with another RPCV. If you're going that route or whatever, they talk about themselves. That's easy. There's no prep work, right? So that's what I want to add to that.
yeah. So Melissa, I just want to check in with you. Did you have a question, or were you raising your hand saying I had a bad boss?
I was raising my hand. Yes, I can relate. I've had several
Yes, exactly.
But everything you've been saying, it's right on point. I think for me, just looking back, I, I had such a great experience networking, but for some reason, after returning, back from Peru, I've kind of lost my contacts. Not only that, I'm, I think I had shared with you before and wanting to change careers. So now I'm altogether in a different state. And so I'm taking the steps to kind of reach out and see who I can connect with and, take it from there.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I love this, Melissa, because these are uncomfortable situations when you're changing careers and in a new state and, recently back, like those are all really tough places to be at. By reaching out, and especially, our RPCVs, we infiltrated the entire, every single state, pretty much every city. There's going to be somebody that that you can reach out to that knows what you've been through and you know what they've been through.
Yes.
So this is one of the best communities to be a part of when it comes to networking.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's turn this into some action here. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we want you to walk out with a game plan. And so I want you to think, what stage are you in? Are you mid-career, career transition, looking for a job, starting something? Are you exploring your options? Are you trying to make connections for a business or a nonprofit that you want to start? So just, kind of where are you in that, that kind of career development path? And then what do you want to get out of this process? So is it a new job? Is it information? Is it connections? Is it human contact? Again, the pandemic has changed so many things, and we've gotten so used to like taking the masks off, putting them back on. Okay, now I'm free to travel. Nope, I got to go back home. And so sometimes this human connection is a beautiful reason to network. And then what kind of people do you need to talk to? So who is going to help you meet your goal? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific person. I want you to think in terms of types. So if it's like director of a nonprofit, if it might be someone who understands the world of community development in Baltimore, so just kind of get some specifics about where are you at, what is your goal, what kind of people do you need to talk to. So we're going to put you into breakout rooms and give you all 15 minutes. So I think, how many people are going to be in each room, Jody?
There should be 3 people in each room.
Great. So 5 minutes each. So, just introduce yourself, describe, where you are in the process. What is your goal? What do you want to get out of even, this workshop series? And then as a group, you can think through what are the different kinds of people that you would need to talk to meet your goal. And then we'll bring you back in and we'll talk a little bit more and give you some more ideas on how to implement your game plan. So before we send you in, are there any questions? If so, you can put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself.
And if you have any issues in your group or need anything, you can certainly, let us know, or one of you, leave that and come to the main group and we'll help you. That's fine. You can request help. There's usually a button that says help. So Awesome. I'm going to open all the rooms. Is that okay?
Let's do it. Okay.
All righty. Great.
Okay. And I am not going to join.
Yes, you can either just join and then, yeah, leave right away or whatever. But yes, that will be 3 in each group. That's perfect.
Okay.
And I'm going to pause the recording and
Perfect.
here we go. We'll start it up. That's the challenge.
Everybody. All right, so welcome back. And so basically, the point of this breakout room was again to help you be intentional about what you're going to do next. So what we want to do now is just give you a few more ideas and concepts around networking that you can incorporate into your game plan.
Okay. So when we think about the foundations of effective networking, and we've kind of, hit on some of this, maybe a little in part, the important thing for me, and I love this graphic because it's not begging for a job, right? If you're going to do networking effectively, you're really seeking insight versus asking for a job, right? That generally is more when you're asking for a job, it's more, whoa, they're kind of, caught off guard, and they generally don't have a job to offer you per se, but they may have some really valuable insight that then will, lead you to potentially a job. And you might remain connected to them, and you might be able to follow up with them and say, again, thanks so much again for all of your valuable insight. I just saw a position with whatever the organization is in this department. Wondering if you're at all familiar with that department. It seems like an excellent fit for my own, background, and I'm seriously considering, applying. And then they might come back and say, oh my gosh, my coworker used to manage that area, and they might connect you with somebody who you get more insight from. So it's great. It's just building from that foundation, right? You're seeking insight. So approach it as, I'm doing some research, or I'm considering a career, change, and, really leaning toward the whatever sector, and, asking, for their assistance, and then keeping in touch, right? And then also, I think really that I can't emphasize enough that mutually beneficial relationship. I actually have a session that I'm going to be doing, and I want to say it's next Monday. It's if you look on our events calendar, it's on the karma of the job search, right? So give before, like help before asking for help, right? And talk, ways that you can do that. There's some creative ways you can actually offer assistance and all of that. But don't approach it as, oh yes, I'm just in need, I need this help and you can help me, and all of that. People want to connect with people that they're interested in, and you might have a lot that you can actually offer them, whether or not it's job related, right? Sometimes it's information on something completely not related to the job search, right? You might be talking to them. The example I give oftentimes is, maybe they just got a new puppy, right? And you find this out when you're talking to them. Oh, wow, what kind of puppy? Oh, great. Oh, wow, I've had dogs all my life, love, and then maybe you reconnect your reconnection with them in a couple of weeks. Maybe, you've exchanged some emails, and then you're just kind of, there's not a lot, coming, whatever. You might reach out and say, hey, just thinking about our, great conversation a few weeks ago, and thought of you when I came across this puppy training manual, thought you might find it valuable. How's the puppy doing? Like, that's going to have them remember who you are, right? And the whole person that you are, not just, oh, this is just somebody who wants something from me, wants an introduction to somebody, wants a job. No, it's coming in with that as well, right? It doesn't have to be a puppy. It might be you find out they're passionate about, monitoring and evaluation, God forbid, right? And so you find something, that might be interesting on that. So great. And then lastly, I always emphasize to people, be sure that you respect their time and limit yourself to whatever time they had agreed to, right? And so when you're asking for that maybe conversation, it really helps, if you kind of put a timeline. Maybe it's wondering if you might have 15, 20 minutes of your time to chat a little bit more about your own experience. I'd love to hear more about, your own position and how your whatever Peace Corps skills have helped in that, or whatever it is. 15 to 20 minutes is the key there, is what you've asked for, right? They're much more likely to say yes to that than when you ask for this, informational interview and you leave it open. Instantly when I get asked that, it's like, oh gosh, I'd love to, but I don't have an hour, right? Whereas a career chat, wondering if you might have 15, 20 minutes at your convenience, that's super easy, right? You can offer to go to them, of course, COVID, whatever, a lot of this is now virtually, but, and going to them, if they want you to come to their place, bonus, you're inside their organization. And then, who knows, you might be talking about something and they're like, oh, my colleague works more in that. Let me grab him or her. Great, right? So just think about those kinds of things, right? And just go from there. And then thank you, Rhonda, for putting this one on as well. We are getting close to finishing here, but we really want to have you think when you're thinking about your network. You were talking about your network already, but know your network. Like, look at your existing network, and this whole purpose of this is to really show you, look how many people are already in your network that you may disregard, or you may not even think of them as, oh wow, I wonder that your Peace Corps family, huge, 220,000 RPCVs, doesn't have to be just the ones who serve with you, right? Whether there's religious or civic affiliations, things like that, right? Your friends, of course, right? Former employers, of course. Your professional associations, maybe you're involved in the Peace Corps, Peace Corps Community for Refugees, or some of the other organizations that you meet other people in, right? Your family, yes, obviously, but sometimes people overlook that, right? This is your extended family, right? Your alma mater, both your university and your high school, even, believe it or not, that can be really rich for mining contacts to help, in terms of your own search. And LinkedIn is the reason LinkedIn is so great, is it can suss through and really, it can put all these things, when you do your search, which Ron is going to walk through and do a great job of showing you, like a live demo of how to do this right next week. So look forward to that with all of you. But you're in the center, and look at all these that you already know. And I was going to have you take a few moments to complete this now, to start it, right? Just jotting down, some of those. And we can do that, I think, for a few minutes.
Yeah, do.
Yeah, maybe a couple minutes, but just know that, and maybe you even take a picture of this slide right now. I mean, we're going to send you the slide deck as well, but just so you have what all the categories are, because once you have that and you're like, your friends and your former employers and, all of that, there's other ones that I don't even have captured here, but that's the first step, right? Wading into the waters of networking with your known connections, your contacts, your network that's already existing, but maybe isn't a network. You already have the contacts, but you haven't maybe brought those in or really connected with or reconnected with them in one way or another. So look at it as that way. So
yeah, think through your goal that you discussed as part of your game plan. And then for these boxes, just think, who do you already know who can help you meet that goal? All right, I'm setting a timer. And so you've got 2 minutes.
And I'm going to go ahead and pause it for these 2 minutes.
And
yes, thank you. So I hope you, did get some new ideas, some things down. And this is your really like low risk one, right? I mean, these individuals are already, in your network. So they would count to connect with, reconnect with, and kind of just, letting them know where you're at, what you're doing. They're going to ask when you connect. So absolutely. Any questions on that before we move on? All right, take it away, Rhonda.
okay. So basically what I just want to get you thinking about, is it's exactly the opposite of what I'm doing. Hold on. Jody, help me. There we go. Okay. So
Sorry, I was on mute. I was trying to help you.
And so, okay, arrows, mouse, it's all very confusing when you're in the midst of it. So as Jody mentioned, it's really, really useful to start with who you know. And as we keep saying, the people in your network are not necessarily people that you know, like your alumni, like your RPCV family. And so what I just want to talk briefly about, and we'll talk more about this next week, but how do you then expand your network? So you've already got a rich network, whether or not you think you do. And sometimes you will also realize, okay, well, I do know a lot of people, but I don't know very many people in the field that I want to move into, or in the state that I recently moved to, in the neighborhood I recently moved to. And so basically just some strategies for finding people. So obviously, LinkedIn is developed for professional networking. Facebook can also be, especially, Jody was talking about your high school friends. Well, you can't easily put your high school in LinkedIn, but often we've got, Facebook groups of the people that we graduated with. And so just start to see who might be posting things that you really resonate with. One of the things that I really appreciate about LinkedIn, again, we'll talk about this more, but there are a ton of different groups. And in those groups, if you become a member of them, then you can see where people's interests are. And Facebook also considers, not Facebook, LinkedIn considers people that you are in the same group as a part of your connections. So if you're looking for a specific industry, then do a search for that in LinkedIn. And I also really want, again, to encourage you to go to the places where you feel comfortable, whether that's social media or whether that is, is your community coffee shop or a lecture, Zoom conferences. I mean, there's a lot of things happening virtually as well. So start with what sounds fun to you. And from there, then you've got a natural entree into, okay, so for example, I enjoy rock climbing. So there's something that happens every Wednesday night. Well, not in the wintertime, but where people get together and they can spot each other. And so then you can have these conversations doing something that you love. How did you get into rock climbing? Oh, well, what else do you do? And and then you're starting with something common. But if you are spending time on social media, then take a look at what people are posting, and commenting on that, sharing those things. Those are some ways to start building connections in a very low-key way. So if someone wrote an article that you were interested in, you could like it, and then you could message them and say, I really appreciated what you said about A, B, C, and D. I was wondering if you might have 15 or 20 minutes so that I could hear more. And so those are some of the things that you can do: LinkedIn, Facebook, social media. And again, next week, I'll be doing a demo of, searching for job titles and locations. And again, if you just moved into a state, look for a job title in the city that you're at. And then you'll get a lot of people that you can reach out to and start talking with them. You are muted, Jody.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, didn't want any background noise there. So just another comment on, when you're looking for and thinking about who are the most valuable, contexts for your job search, for example. And again, if you're not doing it for the job, it's more, what is the target audience I'm trying to reach? Who am I interested in connecting with? What kinds of shared passions, things like that. But this slide is more for the job search itself. And so thinking about obviously trying to connect with people who have similar job titles to what you're looking for, because you can, even before you connect with them, and maybe for some that you don't even connect with, you look at their LinkedIn profile and you see what their experience is, what they do, how do they describe themselves. That can help you to assess whether or not, hey, this might not be a position that I'd really like, or yes, this sounds great, I really want to connect with people in this. So I think that's one. And then also looking at jobs, the job titles that are like one, maybe two, even three levels above where you're at. If it's an industry or a sector that you think you see yourself in long term, the growth potential, and looking at, you can look at in LinkedIn, where did they go from? What was their entry level? How did they move around? Those kinds of things, and connecting with people in that regard and hearing their story can be very helpful for your own job search. And then, job titles, that might interact with yours, like your own title. So ones that might be related or somehow intertwined, right, is another thing to think about. And then lastly, looking at recruiters, corporate recruiters and headhunters, and all of these recruiters online. Like when you're doing a job search via LinkedIn, you instantly have like many recruiters that are trying to maybe connect with you and about different opportunities. So it's kind of a two-way street there too. That can be really helpful for you. So those are the things that I wanted to share there.
Yeah. And again, going back to what Brian had said originally, how LinkedIn isn't comfortable for everyone. I really consider it to be a database more than a networking site. It is a really amazing way to find people you couldn't find any other way. Okay,
Yep.
so now basically, as we mentioned before, networking, the work that we're doing here is like eating broccoli. And what I want you to do this upcoming week is start flexing your muscles. And what are some strategies that I recommend is that you want to have realistic expectations and you want to make it doable for yourself. So many times, if we're like going to start something new, we'll spend an entire day doing it and then be so exhausted and burned out and frustrated with it at the end that we never want to do it again. And so make it small. Just think about something that you can do for only 5 or 10 minutes a day, or even every other day. The important thing is to do it and do it consistently. And this is the thing about networking that I would really want to communicate is, again, if you can reshape it from networking to community building, and then just work it into your life where you're always just stretching yourself just a little bit to reach out to people that you enjoy talking to. Again, this doesn't have to be painful. So start small. And we mentioned, again, one of the reasons why people tend not to network is because they did it before and it didn't work. That's because most people don't respond. That's just part of the game. But you don't need everybody to respond. The thing that's really interesting, so there's a book called The 2-Hour Job Search, which is written for MBA graduates from Duke. And so it's a younger cohort, but what he talks about is that there is a type of person that loves to give back, who loves to connect, who loves to talk to you, loves to pay it forward and make those connections. I call those people advocates. They're the people that where you would be bringing them joy if you ask for their advice. And that is about 20% of the population. And the thing about looking for those people is that it's actually pretty easy to find them. You just have to ask. And if they respond, most likely there's someone who is really excited to talk to you. And so when Jody was talking about job titles, you certainly want to look at those people, but it's not the job title that makes someone a good connection. It is their personality. Mm-hmm. And so a job title is just a place to start. But really, you're looking for people who really enjoy doing this. And then again, you're not asking for a favor, you're making their day, right? And the other thing that I want to say is that part of being persistent is following up. So I just said that the people who are really excited are going to respond to you, but if they don't get your email or they don't get your connection request, then they can't respond. So I personally recommend, because I hate feeling like I'm a burden on people. I hate feeling like I'm a gnat. So I've made this comfortable for myself where I'll send out one email, and if I don't get a response, a week later, I'll send out another one. Just, hey, I know things might be really busy for you. I just wanted to let you know that I would still really love to talk to you. And, here a couple times, if you've got 20 minutes during these pockets, that would be great. We'll talk more about the actual wording that you can use to reach out to people. But that's really what I recommend. Be consistent, be persistent, follow up. And then if you don't hear from someone, just ask somebody else. And so it is not trying to force people to respond to you. It's knocking on their door and seeing if they answer. So I know, as always, we're a little bit over, so we want to wrap up. But please put in the chat. I want you to think of one thing that you can do this week. And what Jody and I really want to encourage you to do is to connect or reconnect with someone that you wouldn't have reached out to under other circumstances. That could be an email, that could be a phone call. It doesn't have to be career related. What I want you to do is build that muscle of reaching out to people and just saying, hey, thinking of you. It's been a long time. How are you doing? And so
this is your homework.
And this is your homework. It doesn't have to be that, but I want to give you just 1 minute to think about what you're going to do. Put it in the chat. That's a bit of public accountability. This research shows this helps us to accomplish our goals when we state it publicly. So, and if you have any questions, that is next, and unmute yourself. Okay. I always have this problem. I keep talking instead of breathing and letting people do what I ask them.
I'm just waiting for that chat box to start catching on fire. Just everyone.
That's right. It's coming, Jody.
Exactly. And again, this is just so that next week we can kind of touch base and say, hey, and we won't even probably say your name, right? Somebody shared that they were going to connect with an old high school friend in whatever, anyone want to give us an update on that? And, send a message to a former colleague who just,
Yeah.
Lost it. Oh, who just found a job?
Just
Great. That's a congratulations one. That's an easy one. Exactly. So happy for you. Mm-hmm.
Karen, I love your idea. Yep. Someone who has a career you aspire and getting her advice.
Nice.
So good. Set up a network tree with a phone number. Yeah. Make it something small that you can just do in 5 or
Yep.
10 minutes. It doesn't have to be, like reach out to the entire world. Yeah.
Great.
Review LinkedIn profile. Great, Shana. And send overdue thank you emails. Good. I'm glad that we can be an impetus for you to do those things.
Great.
Check in with
That's
the
excellent.
friends.
I got a picture of it. And of course you can
Okay.
download the chat box the chat, conversation if you'd like as well. Just, I think most people know how to do that, where you go and where you would put your message in the 3 dots and you just click on it and put download chat, and it'll download it to your folder, wherever that is on your device, where Zoom is. So
Okay.
great.
So,
This is excellent.
yep, I know that we're a little bit over. So just really quickly, we are going to
Our
be
last slide.
focusing on LinkedIn next week and how you can use that to identify people to talk to. And then
Rhonda, sorry,
Yes.
Rhonda, can I just say, and use it to the full extent without paying the premium rate. There's some really
Absolutely.
good tricks that you can follow to not have to be sucked into paying that very expensive rate.
Yep, exactly. And so next week is going to be like really kind of nuts and bolts of how to do this. So how to increase your competence and comfort using LinkedIn, and then how to expand your network. We're going to be building on what we've talked about this today, and then start the what am I going to say part of it. So we often call it the elevator pitch, but it really is just a very simple way to introduce yourself. And and so our goal is to break down these steps and make it really easy to implement. That's what we're going to be doing next week. So Jody and I are going to be here I can be here for another 5 minutes or so. So if you've got any questions, just please unmute yourself. Otherwise, you'll be getting an email with a recording in the slideshow of this tomorrow.
And Rhonda, along with that, as I put in the chat box, will be an evaluation. And please, please, please take just a few moments to fill that out, because it really provides valuable feedback to Rhonda and I on what worked, what didn't, what would you prefer? How do we move forward? We really want your constructive, feedback, to make this most effective, because it's for you. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So any questions? Anything that you guys want to share about what you learned or anything like that? Okay. Thanks, Karen. All right.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we can finish up. That's great. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. So it's getting a little late on the